say, now the time has come for the lion to tell his own story. Yeah, the one them called Celestial represent for the mighty lion voice. And this a shook up your planet tectonic. As me sip up my roots and tectonic. And you can't make me jump nor get panic. Have the engine a run like mechanic. Room.
I'm Nana Farika. The time has come for the lioness to tell her story from her viewpoint and tell the world who Queen Omega is. This is the lion's voice.
And in 1966, 2 years later, when His Majesty visits Jamaica, His Majesty comes and brings a wreath to lay on the tomb of Marcus to show there's no hard feelings. And this is why I say it's a father-son relationship, because the whole time there was no hard feelings, and His Majesty going to lay the wreath, which that could have been stricken off, because remember the last thing His Majesty hear from Marcus was the disrespect, But His Majesty said, I'm going to show respect to Marcus, the great works, acknowledging Jamaica's first hero, acknowledging the great works that Marcus has done. So by laying that wreath, he laid to rest any negativity, and that is where we should view this relationship as one, where the son, had some critique of the father and how the father was administrating, and the father saying, just take time will vindicate, I can't deal with you right now. However, took no rejoicing that Marcus passed, and did go and show his respect by laying the wreath on the grave of the Honorable Marcus Garvey. So, this is something, again, the theory and the practice. Sometimes we don't know what is in front of a leader. The hard decisions that you have to make between not so good and bad. And sometimes you have to go with the not so good, because you still have to move forward. And you don't have the luxury of saying, if I can't get only black teachers, or I can't fly in the black world to fight this war, I have to deal with what I have in front of me, because doing nothing is not an option. And this is the lonely road of leadership, and all of us will face it. And again, anyone who has stepped into a leadership position faces this gap between theory and practice,
Well, lion voice, tell them that's the people first choice. Lion voice, make the lioness them feel nice. Lion voice, with the lion cubs we sacrifice. Lion voice, got to show the people them the life. Lion voice.
Well, great is the Almighty, and greatly to be praised in the city of Haile Selassie I, the mountain of His holiness.
Yeah, from Cape to Cairo, from Timbuktu to the Nile, the whole entire continent.
Beautiful for situation, the joy of the whole earth is Mount Zion, from Accra to Addis Ababa.
Yes, it's a beautiful continent, better control, Mama Africa.
Very beautiful.
From Cape to Cairo, from Timbuktu to the Nile, I smile for Mama Africa.
I hear you call Mama Africa. Been so long since I see Mama. Father of Africa set the law. The lion come and dismantle Babylon flaw. We gonna use solar energy, use sanitation to build the ecology. We utilizing green technology. We hailing Haile Selassie first without apology. And then we build the youth them economy. We dismantle Babylon monopoly. We teach the youth them how to live properly. Tell them make sure them got the title for them property.
Yes, this beautiful continent, better control, Mama Africa.
love your mama, your heart never harden. I wanna turn all your slums into garden. I wanna stop all of your youths from starving. I wanna stop all of your tribes from warring. So much to say, so many feelings. We both been hurt, we both need healing. Since the League of Nations you've been appealing. You stand up against them backdoor dealing. I hear you.
Greetings in that divine name of His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie I. Glory and honor in the name of his chosen queen, Empress Waziri Menen. My name is Kwasi Bansu, aka the DEJAZMATCH Kwasi, aka Ras Kwasi, aka the Reading Ras, aka the Pan-African Happy Man, creative industry attorney. I'm an author, I'm an artist, I'm an actionist, and right now I am the host of the Lion's Voice. Welcome to the Lion's Voice, and welcome to the Lion Voice Network, where the Lions are telling our own story. If this is your first time on the network, welcome to all our new subscribers. We have passed 3,144 subscribers at the time of this recording, which is monumental growth for the channel. Over 500 subscribers in the last 28 days. So we give thanks to all of our new subscribers, a lot of them coming in through Ghana. It seems that the artists interviews are really drawing in a lot of ones, and we hope that, you know, while you come in for the artists, that you stay around and look at some of the other programming on the channel. We just dropped an episode of Lion Love featuring social media influencers Kishela, Empress Kishela. Powerful interview. Check it out on the channel. We dropped the full episode clips for the item. How do you feel about popular culture for women of today? Your age group, you know, your would you be considered a millennial or Generation Z?
A millennial.
A millennial. Okay, so for your generation, who would be the, you know, the top artists? Would be the Cardi B's and these kind of. What do you feel about the popular culture? You know, all of the kind of hip hop that's out there right now.
To be honest, it's demonic. It's not really what we should be following. It's not good.
We also have the Lion Talk Live. We had the Rastafari Independent Non-Aligned Media with Dreadlocks, and we had a beautiful live about the Association of Rastafari Creative Summer Camp that is servicing Rastafari youth from across the globe. Check out those episodes. Today though, August 17th, we celebrate the Earth Strong of two mighty figures within the Pan-African world. Honorable mention also to the Crown Prince, Zariakob, who, according to His Imperial Majesty, was in the line of succession for the throne after the impairment of his firstborn son, Afsa Wosen. Who are the two Pan-Africans that I'm talking about? Every Pan-African watching this know already. One of them is, of course, the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. The other being, of course, Emperor Menelik II. We both share their Earth Strong on this day, August 17th. So I'm going to do a two-part feature on these two, because I don't want, you know, I can't do justice to do both of them in one episode, and I want to do a kind of deep dive into both. So this strong, I'm going to start off with the Honorable Marcus Garvey. Next strong we'll do Emperor Menelik. And when we do the Emperor Menelik side, of course we will go into the book Haile Selassie Ethiopia, that carries a good portion of the history of Emperor Menelik from his birth coming straight up. He's one of the main characters. Of course, he was a priestly warrior king, so he's one of the main characters in this groundbreaking work, Haile Selassie Ethiopia. Make sure if you have not gotten your copy that you get your copy. And as we anticipated, the book is picking up steam. I'm getting calls, we're getting reach outs, and remember that you can get your signed copy off of the website. So if you go down to the website right here, you can get the signed copy of the work sent straight to you if you're in North America. If you are outside of North America, we have to try work out something, but send us a message and we can see what can be worked out. But you can get it off of Amazon if you're outside of North America. Also in Jamaica, iNation Books, big up iNation, is carrying it. He's at the Kingston Night Market and many events across the island. So make sure, check iNation to get your copy. Alright, so today we're going to talk about Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And I'm going to issue a trigger warning because we're going to get a little bit critical of the Honorable Marcus. And I know for some of my viewership, particularly I Bobo Shanti family, you know, Marcus occupies a place in the Trinity. So we just want to put out a trigger warning in advance. No disrespect intended. We're just giving our perspective based on the history of Honorable Marcus, because I think it's an instructive lesson right now for the Rastafari and the Pan-African family as we grapple with some hard realities that confront the family. And the main thing that we're looking at is the gap between theory and practice. You know, Pan-African theory and practice. Black supremacy, theory and practice. You know, these are the things that we have to really analyze. And by looking at the history and some of the mistakes that Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey made, you know, some of the points where ego got the better of Honorable Marcus Garvey, we can learn lessons and prayerfully avoid making some of those same mistakes. And I would argue that the relationship between Honorable Marcus Garvey and His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie the first was that of a father and a son. You know, the son becoming more radical than the father and feeling like the father don't know what him do and voicing it publicly, you know what I mean? His displeasure with the father's reality. And, you know, there were consequences. The Honorable Marcus passed in a way that is not so idolful, you know what I mean? And we'll get into how he died and when he died and all of these things. But for those who are unaware what I'm talking about, we're talking about the Italian Ethiopian invasion and Honorable Marcus Garvey saying some very critical things about His Imperial Majesty. But before we get into the critique, the scathing criticism that Marcus had of His Majesty, and we'll look into it and see if it warrants any justification. Who was Marcus Garvey? Marcus Garvey was born in Jamaica, and he is one of the foremost Pan-Africanists. I've heard it said that in America, black people did not start looking white people in the eyes until the Honorable Marcus Garvey came with the UNIA. Many of the leaders who were rise to become prominent in the civil rights movement had their origins as Garveyites.
And we can't forget about African leaders such as Kwame Nkrumah, who loved Garvey so much he put the black star on the Ghana flag. You also had Nnamdi Azikiwe, first Prime Minister of Nigeria. What about Julius Nyerere of Tanzania, Jomo Kenyatta of Kenya, and so many more major influence for African liberation movement. So Marcus Garvey plays as the foremost Pan-Africanist, aside from His Imperial Majesty, who I place at number 1 on the Pan-African charts. Kadamawi, the first, you know what I mean? But aside from Kadamawe, there's none other than Marcus. His place is sealed in the history.
So, who am I talking about? If you look at Malcolm X, his father was a Garveyite. When we look at the Honorable Drew Ali, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, all of these ones were Garveyites coming out of the Marcus Garvey movement. I believe Martin Luther King's father had some origins in the Garveyite movement as well. The item can correct I in the comments if that's not correct, but I believe I did read that somewhere. And the platform that Marcus came to was that he was looking at the Almighty through the spectacles of Ethiopia. He was a Catholic, you know what I mean, but he interpreted everything from a black point of view. And the main thing was, again, Africa for the Africans, those at home and those abroad, repatriation, some of the basic tenets that still remain as the core of the Rastafari movement. The Honorable Leonard Howell, you know, Archibald Dunkley, Charles Hibbert, all of these ones were coming out of that Marcus Garvey reality. He was a giant when it comes on to Pan-African movement. The Black Star Liner, you know, when we hear Bubba Shanties talk about 7 miles of high water ship, you know what I mean? Big up all the Bubba Shanty family. Marcus Garvey is the one who inspired it and got the furthest of any Pan-African leader in realizing that goal. Now, the first black FBI agent in the history of the United States of America got his job so that he could infiltrate the UNIA, and we realized that Marcus Garvey was heavily infiltrated, and every black leader has had to face this type of infiltration. And this is something that we have to recognize, you know. His Majesty, of course, faced it. So this is, again, where we talk about the gap. Because the chessboard that His Majesty is playing on is much greater as the head of the most ancient monarchy. We have to realize that while every black leader has been attacked, His Majesty was actually attacked and invaded the largest army in the history of the modern era to ever invade Africa. Was the Italian Invasion Force, which by some estimates numbered in excess of 300,000 soldiers on the ground coming into Eritrea, when you include the Eritrean forces that fought against their Ethiopian brothers, who are called the Askari. So His Majesty had to deal with this on a scale never before seen. Marcus Garvey was attacked by J. Edgar Hoover, the cross-dressing head of the FBI, who, you know, some people say had some black genetics and probably was a self-hating person. But that's another story. I won't get into J. Edgar Hoover history. But Marcus Garvey ended up being arrested. Before that, you know, he lost the favor of a lot of his African American supporters by not really overstanding culture in America when he decided to meet with the head of the Ku Klux Klan. Of course, Garvey's rationale was that they wanted black people to go back to Africa. He wanted to go back to Africa. So him never really business what him had deal with. He was trying to find some middle ground. That didn't go well with the African American base that he had built. So there were a lot of divisions in UNIA even before the infiltration and the division. But he was arrested on mail fraud, trumped up charges, ended up being deported back to Jamaica. A land that did not love him. So he could not build the same strength in Jamaica. He started the PPP party and tried to get into politics. It was not successful, and he ended up moving to London in 1935. This is the same year that the Italian invasion took place. So he was in London watching the events unfold, again, the largest invasion. And by that time, we have to understand that where his mental state was. You know, it was not the early 20s when the UNI was at its strength. It was a Marcus who had been beaten by life, you know what I mean, at every turn, but who still held firm to the vision that he had. Some people would argue that trying to go to Liberia instead of Ethiopia was the error, because Liberia, of course, was an American protectorate by all means, although some people say it's independent, but when you dig into the history of Liberia, you see it was under the American sphere of influence. So I don't consider Liberia as a truly independent African state. It was really being run by the Firestone Company and their rubber plantations, and they sabotaged Marcus Garvey's efforts. So by the time he goes to London, Marcus is in a head state, you know what I mean? And he already has an impression that he's formed of the emperor. He's not a fan, because he feels the emperor should have been more radical in reaching out to the black world. He feels like the emperor is trying to dissociate himself from the black world. Now, we have the benefit of hindsight, and we who have done the research understand that even after the coronation, His Majesty did reach out to black Americans, trying to recruit them for his nation building. He was stopped by the State Department in America, who were not issuing the passports. He was offering African Americans competitive salaries, vacations, all kind of perks and benefits. He also gave the first land grant at Lake Tana. This is before Shashamane, for black Americans. Of course, the rest of Africa was under colonial rule, so he couldn't necessarily reach out to other parts of Africa because of the restrictions. You know, it's even difficult today for inter-Africa trade. So even back then, there was zero inter-Africa trade that was happening. It was all being extracted to the colonies. And so, very difficult again. And His Majesty at this time is preoccupied with the centralization of Ethiopia up until the coronation, through the coronation, because we remember that Ethiopia up until this time is a confederation of warring kingdoms. And I speak about this in Haile Selassie's Ethiopia. This is why I wrote the book, because I think a lot of people from the outside don't realize what had to be done to even unite Ethiopia. It was thought, and you can read in the papers of the day, that even at the coronation of His Majesty, that a civil war could have broken out, because you had the great Rasses and their private armies coming to Addis Ababa, and many of them did not like each other. Many of them had shed blood with them one another, and they were coming to show their fealty to the King of Kings. But it was a tense situation, because these people don't usually meet, much less with the might of their armies. But His Majesty, because of the work he had done prior, was able to be crowned without any incident. This in itself could be considered a miracle. Now, ones like Marcus Garvey wouldn't be aware of these dynamics. They would just be critical that Ethiopia had not progressed faster. Again, the gap between theory and practice. This is what we have, family, because from the outside in, you know what I mean, you sit at home, you watch a leader, you don't know what the day-to-day is like. I want to just big up one of my jegnas, Haile Garima, the world-renowned filmmaker. I had opportunity to sit in with him recently, and he has just finished a film about the Italian invasion that's going to be coming out called Black Lions, and we're looking forward to that. And he's also historically been very critical of the emperor, and one of his critiques was how the emperor brought in these white instructors and basically Europeanized, according to him, the education system. And again, what I was trying to explain is that to scale the education system, the public education system in that time, His Majesty had to bring in foreign instruction and to bring in people who would implement his vision. Because remember, not everybody thought His Majesty knew what he was doing. These warring kingdoms and different races, they were not into this modern education. Nothing. This was a fight. So, the practical reality of implementation, sometime corruption will come in, other things will seep in. Does His Majesty get out of the blame as the leader? Yes, you can give some accountability, but the fact that he's able to implement it in real life is messy, and we have to take all these things into the account. And when we look at even the Almighty, if you don't subscribe to Rastafari, people would say, how is there an Almighty if there's war on the earth? How is there an Almighty if there's corruption in the earth? If the Almighty created all things, why is there a Satan? Why is there a devil? So the same critiques that the people have of His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie I is the same critiques everyone who is an atheist or who is a non-believer would have of the creator of the heavens and the earth. So there's no escaping criticism as a leader, because with free will, people do what they want. You can put them in position. You can put all the pieces on the chessboard. But if a man is a thief, he might go thief. So this is the reality of leadership. And anyone who's led anything knows what I'm talking about. Again, the gap between theory and reality. Marcus himself should have known. The people he had running the Starliner were FBI agents. His vision of the Black Starliner was not incorrect. The implementation, because maybe Marcus couldn't find someone who had the qualification, couldn't find someone who he could implement, and he did what was in front of him, the best option at the time, at least what he thought, and we got what we got. In the same way, His Imperial Majesty, building Ethiopia, had to use facts on the ground. He couldn't invent people. He couldn't create a reality that did not exist. He had to mold the reality that existed the best way. And with time and with hindsight, we see that Ethiopia still remains, even with all the efforts of the CIA, of the KGB, of the Israeli Mossad, of all of these agencies that sought to tear Ethiopia apart. Ethiopia remains as a nation still developing with one of the fastest growth rates on the African continent, even in the midst of wars. And the wars that are happening in Ethiopia right now are not an anomaly. They are a return to the status quo. His Majesty presided over one of the longest periods of peaceful development, in the modern history of Ethiopia. People don't realize this. This is one of the things I'm going to be illustrating in the book, Haile Selassie's Ethiopia, in the volumes as we come up until point of His Majesty's disappearance. So Marcus, when he comes to London, he's looking at Ethiopia and the invasion, and then probably reading the papers and seeing that Italy wins a battle and is occupying the country. And now here comes the critique. But according to my research, what we find out is that Marcus feels slighted that he comes with a delegation to meet His Majesty when he arrives in London, and he's snubbed. He feels, His Majesty does not meet with his delegation of himself and other Pan-Africanist leaders. And I've been trying to find who was in that delegation, What were the circumstances? I can't find it. Only that there was a snub. The next time we hear from Marcus is an article that was written in the Black Man, which was a publication that Marcus created. This is after the Negro World, where he does the editorial, and the editorial is critical. It's not as scathing as some of the other editorials that pass, but it's scathing. This is in July 1936. We see the first, and he's basically saying that Haile Selassie is naive, didn't do what he's supposed to do. If he had reached out to the black world, he wouldn't be in this position. You know, it's a lot of critiques of His Imperial Majesty. So,
in May and June of 1936, Marcus Garvey wrote an editorial in the Black Man. I'm going to just touch a little excerpt. He says here, in a section titled An Exile, he says, Haile Selassie is an exile from his country. He is a sadder but wiser man. In looking over the countries of Europe, he will see the high civilization in quotes, of the white man. He will see how the masses of white people in Europe exact from their governments the best of conditions and opportunities for existence, and how the governments stop at nothing to grant these with satisfaction. He would be able to contrast European civilization with Ethiopian backwardness, where 99.5% of the population was kept in ignorance, where the people were unable to read or write and knew nothing about the civilized practices of an outer world, where men in a democracy secure rights to which they are entitled. And then the next section was titled The Evil of Backwardness. He says, and this is where you see he's not fully vexed with His Majesty yet. This was fresh, after the annexation or the occupation. In this section called The Evil of Backwardness, he says, we are not blaming Haile Selassie for the present backwardness of Ethiopia, because he had but a very short time to show his statesmanship and to help his country. For the time that he was head of the empire, he started to do good reform work. But it was the very attempt of these reforms that caused Italy to become impatient, feeling that if these reforms were allowed to continue, the desire to conquer the country would not be fulfilled. So while Haile Selassie was endeavoring to do his best, Italy struck the blow under Mussolini with the assistance of the other European nations who connived with him as by indications. And then I'll skip down to the section here. Well, I'll read the rest of it. This is the last section. The next section is called Failure of Sanctions, and he says, the refusal of nations to apply sanctions in severe form can be interpreted as nothing else but a tacit encouragement to the aggressor. The Emperor of Abyssinia did not understand this. He was not accustomed to that kind of diplomacy, and so he fell for the hypocrisy of the League of Nations and has suffered the loss of his country. Might is right. Mussolini has raised the standard of might being right. It is now understood the policy of the world that to possess anything you must first have might, and you must use it against those who do not possess it, and take for yourself the things that you want. This has been well proved by Italy, with the support of the civilized nations of Europe in the conquest of Abyssinia. Not the last. We are satisfied, this is the last section. We are satisfied, however, that we have not heard the last of the Italo-Abyssinian affair. We know well that within another 500 years, the world will return to the very scenes of operation that give Italy her triumphs today in Abyssinia. We will hear more of Adwa, more of Addis Ababa, more of Harar, more of Dessie. The future is dark and gloomy, but only the people of might will be able to survive it. Those races that depend upon anything else but might must expect to be destroyed. The emperor of Ethiopia had no might, and he and his people have been destroyed. Negroes, be mighty. And that is the seal. And of course, I would disagree, but there are some very fair observations based on the information that he had. He presumes about what His Majesty knows and didn't know, which is where I would disagree. I think His Majesty knew all of these things. But again, he had to fulfill all of these things for the world history, so that people could see, and so that when judgment is executed, because this is a multi-pronged approach. If you judge His Majesty solely on the political and not the spiritual, then you miss a lot of the moves on the chessboard. These Europeans had to condemn themselves to the judgment that awaits them, which is still unfolding. And His Majesty, just as Yeshua sacrificed himself, his own good, His Majesty understood that Ethiopia would be the nation to be sacrificed, that would rise a new earth, because just as Yeshua sacrificed his goodie to rise the consciousness of the human being and fulfill the pledge that humanity would even supersede the angelic beings, His Majesty used Ethiopia, which was the holy place, as a sacrifice, that the entire earth would be redeemed. And we'll go into that more. But that's Iman sound. You can hear what Marcus said. Put a comment, if you have any comments on what Marcus said. Is it fair and balanced? Was it right? Let's have that reasoning in the comments.
In January 22nd, 1937, in the Washington Tribune, he comes up with a editorial on Imashoot, you know what I mean? This is where now name calling and different things come about to the emperor. And he follows that up in March of 1937 with another editorial on the black man, where he's calling His Majesty a coward.
In his editorial in the Black Man, dated from March and April of 1937, just to give some flavor. So you remember he said we cannot blame the emperor in the first article that he did in 1936, fresh. Now, this looks like it happened after the alleged snub of his delegation, because like I said, he came out shooting. So he started off saying the failure of Haile Selassie as an emperor. Remember, no facts, no change. This is just the editorial is evolving. But he starts off saying, when the facts of history are written, Haile Selassie of Abyssinia will go down as a great coward who ran away from his country to save his skin and left the millions of his countrymen to struggle through a terrible war that he brought upon them because of his political ignorance and his race disloyalty. That is the opening salvo. So just to show you how he must shoot. It is a pity that a man of limited intellectual caliber and weak political character like Haile Selassie became Emperor of Abyssinia at so crucial a time in political history of the world. Unfortunately, Abyssinia lost the controlling influence of a political personality of patriotic racial character like the late Menelik, whose loyalty to his race and devotion to his country excelled all his other qualities, to the extent that he was able to use that very strength to continuously safeguard the interests of the Ethiopian Empire. What he did so well to preserve, a cringing, white slave hero worshipper, visionless and disloyal to his country, threw away. This is the impression the serious-minded political student forms of the conduct of the ex-emperor of Abyssinia. So that is the opening paragraph. I'm not going to read the fullness. All of these are available online for ones to read, but you can see how Marcus come out shooting Probably the most factually incorrect statement he's ever made. And remember, this is the preeminent Pan-African voice of the day. So to think that Haile Selassie did not read this or did not hear about this is wishful thinking. You know, the emperor is reading this. And this will come into play later as we see, you know, the only overt action is the emperor ever made post this period comes during his visit to Jamaica, but we'll get to that later.
All of these things. At the same time, His Majesty is meeting with Dr. Malaku Bayan, his cousin and physician, who comes with the recommendation for the formation of the Ethiopian World Federation. So the same thing that Marcus is critiquing His Majesty about not reaching out to the black world, His Majesty is actually implementing in this time through the creation of the EWF. And for those who doubt how His Majesty felt about the black world, read the Ethiopia World Federation Constitution, which clearly states is for the black peoples of the world, and to carve out a place in the sun, you know what I mean, for the black peoples of the world. So it's clear from the charter, which had to have been approved by His Majesty, and big up to Dr. Malaku Bayan, Howard University alumnus, from the Howard Medical School. You know, I'm a Howard alumnus, so we have to big up Dr. Malaku Bayan, great Howard alumnus. And, you know what I mean, it's clear how His Majesty felt about the black peoples of the world. What we have to understand, you know, is that His Majesty, there was something, because His Majesty never liked being called a Negro, probably black at that time. You know, Ethiopians wanted to be known as Ethiopians because we're connected to a landmass. If you look, you know, from Kemet, come straight up, we always are connected to a landmass. We're named in conjunction with the land. So separating the people from the land was a foreign concept to an independent and free people. So to call these people Negro, we don't know nothing about Negro. We don't know, you know what I mean? So with the translation and these things, you know, that is what some people latch on to in terms of His Majesty not claiming these titles. But the actions speak louder than words. And again, the Ethiopian World Federation Constitution give you all that you need to know in 1937 when these scathing critiques of His Majesty were being launched by the Honorable Marcus of how His Majesty felt. Before I go any further, let me just take time and big up the Lion Pride. If you subscribe, you're part of the Lion Pride. And let me big up the Lion Pride on Patreon. Those who are contributing to keep Rastafari Media independent. We are building on the crowdfunding model, meaning the audience is who will fund this uprising. We cannot depend on sponsorship, although we will deal with sponsorship. We have sponsorship. Big up LIDJ, Ramia King Design, our oldest main sponsor, contributing financially to the uprising. Big up yourself, LIDJ. Anytime you see me a sip in the interviews, then hot or cold liquids, I am sipping from the tumbler from a Rastafari own business. We put our money where our mouth is, literally. Big up yourself, LIDJ. Big up yourself, CMAS Life, Wally King. Greatest CMAS drink I ever taste. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a virgin. And Brother Carl's son. No, and we're going to be interviewing Brother Carl shortly. Brother Carl Philpotts of the 12th tribe of Israel. That's going to be a big one. We're going to be diving deep into Yeshua. A man where anytime him talk, Yeshua him a deal with, you know. So we're going to be dealing with that. We have some big interviews coming down the pipe, family. Just Bear with I. If you're new to the platform, no. Again, I Superpower is the network, and we have not even scratched the surface. I know so many people, and enough of them don't come on the platform yet. We have some gigantic names to come on the platform. So, again, give thanks for the ones who are here early. We are aiming for 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. We're aiming to get 100 subscribers in the Patreon by September 11th. We actually are losing Patreon subscribers because of the Armageddon, and the economy in America is rough right now. So we went from 18 at the height. We're now down to, I think, about uh, 13, 12 or 13 in the Patreon currently. Um, and this is the journey of a content creator. There's something called churn. People will come in, people will leave. We understand that. What we are looking for is the faithful lion pride. Again, $5 if you can start there, and then as your blessings increase, because the more you give, is the more the Almighty will bless you. So start with the $5, pull the trigger, and come and join us. Support what you value, because if you don't invest in what you value, then how will what you value be preserved? And that goes for anything, and not just I. There are many who are doing Rastafari media who have ways to support them. We're going to be interviewing them. We just had Breadlocks, iYard Radio. If you don't want to support go support the brethren. We have Honorable Priest Isaac. I'm getting ready to upload this exclusive interview to the Patreon. Um, go support Honorable Priest Isaac. We have Honorable Priest Kailash as a platform. We have Rastafari TV, Sister Fanai, who's also been on the platform. Go watch her interview. We have Ras Ayan, Yard Real, getting ready for launch out. Anytime you call name, you're gonna forget people. ZG Chapel, big up. Ras Kip Ezekiel. We did an interview with him on the platform. We have so many options in Rastafari independent media. So if you don't want to support Ike, or you don't like, the DEJAZMATCH deal with them thing, and in chat too much and in long-winded, that is fine. But put your money where your mouth is, invest, so that we have platforms where we can control our narrative. Because without that, Rastafari, we are going to be erased. Why? Because the youth them are online, family. Youth them are not pana ends again. The world that we grew up in. I'm probably the last. I'm on generation is probably the last who go and sit at the feet of the elders, hours upon hours, just listening and learning. No youth is doing that right now because they have devices that gone. So if we want to reach them, we have to be on these same devices. So again, I ask, what do you value, Rastafari independent media? And I want to big up Dr. Blackwood, who dropped a $20 super chat during our live that we did for the Association of Rastafari Creators. Big up yourself, Dr. Blackwood. Willow's parents, who always just come in and drop a dollar here, drop a dollar there on the super chat as well. Big up yourself. All of the Ubuntu Lion Pride, these are brethren who give over $50 US, one-time contribution. And once you do that, you are a permanent member of the Ubuntu Lion Pride, because we recognize you made a sacrifice to contribute. You may not be able to do it consistently, but you have done that, and we big up ones like Iras who have done that, ones like Dexton Davis, Ras Dexton, beautiful singer who have done that, and we know many more will come. There's going to be multi-millionaires that see this and drop a 10 grand just to invest to see Rastafari independent non-aligned media rise. And we welcome that they will be recognized as the Ubuntu Lion Pride. We are also going to, when we hit 100 in the Patreon, we're going to take a snapshot of all of the Patreon, and we're going to do something to permanently memorialize those contributors when we build our physical space. Because we will be building a physical production studio. The aim is to create Rastafari-based content. I want to turn my book into an animated film. We want to create animated movies. The Battle of Ottawa need to be told, for the youth them. We need to go into, there's so many stories that need to be told, Emperor Theodro's whole journey from bandit and it's like a Robin Hood story when he was on the countryside. We need feature films, documentaries, all of this content that we love, even about the Honorable Marcus Garvey, documentaries that can go deep. It costs to do the research, to travel, to visit the archives. We want to do serious work here at the Lion Voice Network, and it's going to take resources. So invest if you value and you want to see these things done. We're not going to wait for others to tell our story. We are here to tell our story. So please invest so that we can get it done. All right. Let's get forward to the topic. So His Imperial Majesty lands in London in 1936, June 3rd in Southampton. Stay some time in London until he moves to Bath. We have to understand the state that His Majesty was in. It's reported that he only had £26,000 at this time. And he was trying to free up resources, so he launched several litigations. He had 4 active litigations that he launched at the time. 3, one litigation was against the London agents of the Bank of Abyssinia who owed money. He was able to get an out-of-court settlement of that case. Second litigation was against French owners of the Djibouti Addis Ababa Railroad, which he owned half of the shares. Again, I believe that was settled out of court. And then he also had a litigation against the London newspaper for libel. They were printing some disproved things against him. He also settled that out of court. And then a big case against Cable and Wireless where they ended up giving funds that were owed to Italy on the basis saying that the debt was owed not to Haile Selassie individually but to Ethiopia, and since they recognized Italy's annexation of Ethiopia, that money should go to Italy. So the white supremacy infrastructure was against His Majesty, and His Majesty was at an ultimate low point when he was in Bath, and I don't think I overstand. He did not have money. There was things swirling about bankruptcy. It was reported that a unknown private donor stepped in at the last moment to help with the financing. Again, these are the things that, as Lion Voice Network, we want to be able to finance, go and do the research and find out some of this information because it's not readily available. But somebody stepped in, but before that anonymous donor stepped in, and we don't know who that is. His Majesty was in dire straits. He was not just taking care of himself. He had all of the people who were at Bath with him. He had refugees in Palestine that he was trying to take care of in the early days. There were associations that were formed that helped pick up the slack, but there was no income coming in. And he was the emperor, and he doesn't want to have to beg people money, so he had to just hold it. So you can imagine being in the state and Marcus is over there firing shot after you, and you are worried about, again, the practical reality of leadership. Marcus is wanting to give you a recommendation of where you should do from where you can do, and it might be, You're not going to disrespect him. His Majesty never utter a word sound about Marcus. But you might not go and entertain that at that time is not the right time. And as the children sometimes, you look at the parents, they don't want to deal with you and you feel away. But it's not the time at that moment. And ultimately, you know what I mean, Ethiopia is freed. His Majesty is vindicated. But Marcus never gets to see that. And judgment that Marcus received, you know, is something we don't talk about. This is the trigger warning because many people don't know that Marcus Garvey actually suffered a stroke while in London. And it was reported that he had died in the newspaper. So his obituary actually came out and Marcus was able to read his own obituary before he passed. And in the reading, it thought that, you know, exacerbated his situation, and then he actually had another stroke and died. And this is 1940, before His Majesty returns for the liberation of Ethiopia the next year. So he never was able to see the liberation of Ethiopia. He died in London under these unfortunate. Can you imagine reading your own obituary and you're not even passed, and then, you know, passing? It's a tragic story. But again, we can't help but see, you know, his final days attacking Kadamawi Haile Selassie, and then in that way is a lesson to I and I, you know. And this is why I issue the trigger warning. But it's very important for I and I to overstand, you know. Sometimes we don't overstand the moves of the creator or the moves of someone who is in leadership. Sometimes it's best to stay circumspect and to watch, offer support. But the attacks, and this happens so much in Rastafari, where anyone who rises to take any action is attacked, and we have to stop this. No matter how righteous we think the cause is, because Marcus was convinced that, you know, this black supremacy, don't deal with white people, you trust white people too much, but there was no black people that could help His Majesty at that time with the liberation. He had to play the chessboard the way that the chessboard was being played. And again, he was vindicated. And most of the soldiers that liberated Ethiopia, don't get it twisted, were Africans. When you hear about England liberated Africa, the generals, yes, were Englishmen, but most of the regular troops that were fighting alongside the Ethiopian patriots were from Kenya, from other units, black soldiers from British colonies. It was a Pan-African liberation, but His Majesty couldn't activate that without going through the colonial powers of the time. Again, he had to play the chess. When you're in leadership and you know the board, remember, he might deal with Illuminati, he might deal with Rosicrucianists, he might deal with all type of dragon at a level. So when you know the level, your hand is in the lion mouth, you take time, or the hand is in the crocodile mouth, you take time, take it out. Sometimes people want a more radical approach, but that can't work knowing what you know, knowing who you deal with. And His Majesty was in that position. He knew that the British wanted to control Ethiopia, and he talked about it in his autobiography, volume 2. But he had to work with them because they were able to pull the levers that allowed for this liberation. You know what I mean? So, again, this is the reality. However, in 1964, Marcus Garvey's body is taken forward to Jamaica, and in 1966, 2 years later, when His Majesty visits Jamaica, His Majesty comes and brings a wreath to lay on the tomb of Marcus to show there's no hard feelings. And this is why I say it's a father-son relationship, because the whole time, there was no hard feelings, and His Majesty going to lay the wreath, which that could have been stricken off because remember the last thing His Majesty hear from Marcus was the disrespect, But His Majesty said, I'm going to show respect to Marcus, the great works, acknowledging Jamaica's first hero, acknowledging the great works that Marcus has done. So by laying that wreath, he laid to rest any negativity, and that is where we should view this relationship as one, where the son, had some critique of the father and how the father was administrating, and the father saying, just take time will vindicate. I can't deal with you right now. However, took no rejoicing that Marcus passed, and did go and show his respect by laying the wreath on the grave of the Honorable Marcus Garvey. So, this is something, again, the theory and the practice. Sometimes we don't know what is in front of a leader. The hard decisions that you have to make between not so good and bad. And sometimes you have to go with the not so good because you still have to move forward. And you don't have the luxury of saying, if I can't get only black teachers, or I can't fly in the black world to fight this war, I have to deal with what I have in front of me, because doing nothing is not an option. And this is the lonely road of leadership, and all of us will face it. And again, anyone who has stepped into a leadership position faces this gap between theory and practice. It's easy for a man watch from a side. I know I probably have hundreds of people watch this channel and say, why the Ras not do this? Why him wait to this time to promote that? And what? They don't know what it takes to even be consistent. We've put out over 700 pieces of content on this platform while having a full-time job, while being a father, while sitting on the board of several nonprofits, while dealing with mediation within the family. This one not like that one. Phone call this, emergency that, elder need this, emergency, family members going through health issues. Life is lifing. I'm a Gideon, but we're still putting out the content the best way that we can. Again, anything that you do in life, and this is what I want to leave this episode with, this message for all who are in leadership, and for all those who are watching those in leadership. Instead of launching these attacks, let us have some grace. Let us remember the lessons of Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, our greatest Pan-African leader outside of His Majesty, I would say, and learn that even in greatness you can make mistakes. Even someone as great as the Honorable Marcus could make a misstep and attack Haile Selassie, who is the greatest Pan-Africanist, father of all Africa, and not knowing the full spectrum of the plan, and not knowing the practical realities on the ground. So let us have grace on this day where we remember Honorable Marcus, and let us look to those who are boldly stepping out into the public forum, and let us grant them our support. Or if we have recommendations, let us do it in a way that's not demeaning or resorting to ego or name calling, and let us offer those recommendations, because we all can take them. Let us offer them with a spirit of love, and the same love that His Majesty showed by visiting on his visit to Jamaica the burial space of the Honorable Marcus, to lay the wreath, to show that ultimate respect, moment of silence, and all of these things that he gave to Honorable Marcus, worthy of his station, Haile Selassie, showing by that example what it takes to be a leader. So these are Iman thoughts. What do you think? This might be controversial. Some people don't want nobody talk bad about Marcus, but we have to examine these things, because these are things that confront us. And part of that is that ego that we have, particularly coming out of the island of Jamaica. We rough up people and, you know what I mean, word sound power attack people. How did the item feel about what is stated here? Let us have the conversation in the comments. Remember, Lion Pride, comment with where you are watching from. Let us boost the algorithm and let the other Lion Pride members know where you're calling from or where you're watching from. And also make sure you watch, like, subscribe. We are just getting started, family. Why? Because the time has come for the Lions to tell our own story. And this is the Lion's Voice.
Lion Voice.
Well, great is the Almighty, and greatly to be praised in the city of Haile Selassie I, the mountain of His holiness.
Yeah, from Cape to Cairo, from Timbuktu to the Nile, you know, the whole entire continent.
Beautiful for situation, the joy of the whole earth is Mount Zion, from Accra to Addis Ababa.
Yes, it's beautiful continent, better control, mama.
Very beautiful.
From Cape to Cairo, from Timbuktu to the Nile, I smile. From
I hear you call Mama Africa. Been so long since I seen Mama. Father of Africa set the law. The lion come and dismantle Babylon flaw. We gonna use solar energy, use sanitation to build the ecology. We utilizing green technology. We hailing Haile Selassie first without apology. And then we build the youth them economy. We dismantle Babylon monopoly. We teach the youth them how to live properly. Tell them make sure them got the title fit them property.
yes, this beautiful continent, better control, mama. From Cape to Cairo, from Timbuktu to the Nile, I smile. From
I love you, mama, your heart never harden. I wanna turn all your slums into garden. I wanna stop all of your youths from starving. I wanna stop all of your tribes from warring. So much to say, so many feelings. We both been hurt, we both need healing. Since the League of Nations you've been appealing. You stand up against them backdoor dealing. I hear you call Mama Africa. Been so long since I seen Mama. Father of Africa set the law. The lion come and dismantle Babylon flaw. Then I hear you call Mama Africa. Been so long in America. Father of Africa set the law. The lion come and dismantle Babylon flaw.
So be still, all enemies of Jah. Know that He's the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, the Lion Conqueror. And it was said of Ethiopia, the highest himself shall establish her. His Majesty was born there.
And I know that I love you so. There's no place that I'd rather go. Tired of walking through slush and snow. Repatriation, that's a must I know.